Hi, this is Reverend Dr. Nadine Rosechild-Sullivan, and it is March 21st, 2021. So it's 03/21/21. I come to you tonight. Introducing myself. I am a sociologist, teaching college classes in gender and sexuality, and sometimes race and ethnicity, a diversity scholar. I'm also an interfaith minister and a spiritual counselor. And I just want to come to you today. It is yesterday was the vernal equinox, the first day of spring. And it was also the feast of Ostara. It is, just this space in which the world is warming and things are coming back to life and everything is coming back out again from where it's been, right? So just the earth warming, the goddess waking up, whatever that is for you, right? So in this space, there's some good news. I find spring to be wonderfully good news. I'm really not very fond of winter. I know some people like it, but I've never been into being cold or any of the winter sports. Used to have to walk to school in the snow, that old story, right? So just really not fond of that, but really happy about spring, happy about things beginning to warm up, around me. It's not like totally where I want it to be yet, but it's much better than it was. And so I'm enjoying that piece. And there's some good news this week for many of us, right? There's the good news. Many of us have gotten some sort of pandemic relief checks in our boxes, in our, direct deposits. Mine hadn't arrived the last time I looked, but it should, the last ones did. And so I'm not worried about that. But, that's very, very good news, especially for people who've really desperately needed it. And there's some really good things in that package, some things to help people not get addicted, some things to help people get more food, some things in there to help parents with children, just lots of pieces, an expansion of the Affordable Care Act to make it more accessible to people for whom it has not been as accessible. And I want to say in my own experience with the Affordable Care Act that you really need to make the phone call. Now, I know it's different. It's been different in different states because some states didn't do the Medicaid expansion piece and whatever, but myself, when I first tried to navigate it through the website, that wasn't working very well. But when I made the phone call and hung on through the bad elevator music till a person finally came on the other end and then talked to them and they went through the steps of the process, it ended up with a totally affordable outcome that I was not getting myself just going through the web. So let me encourage you to use the phone if you're in a space of trying to, get health insurance through the Affordable Care Act and healthcare.gov. Call the number. But also, there's other good news for me is I am now 1 week past my second vaccine. And, I slept a lot last weekend and just gave myself the space to do that. And that was wonderful. Just a little bit of fatigue and a sore arm. So not a bad reaction at all last time. And very, very beginning to feel like it's spring in my mind, right? Having come through this whole year. And at the, just on the 12th of March, which is when we locked down last year on the 1 year anniversary of lockdown to get my second vaccine dose. And, I'm still in that waiting period of letting the immunization build and all of that. And I recognize that there are variants in the land. And so I'm still going to live in a way that's generally masked, but there's still a relief in my mind to just be able to, while I'll be masked in public and, and even in some private spaces, there's just that, this whole hellish year, right? And this whole, like, I'm, part of me's extroverted, part of me's introverted. The introverted part hasn't minded so much being on a Zoom camera all year long. And, but, I've been teaching 8 or 9 classes a term on Zoom and, doing spiritual counseling and hypnotherapy via Zoom. And so it's just, I do like to get out once in a while. And so I'm looking forward to this turning of the year and this provision of the vaccine and the promise. It was really hard to get those appointments. Again, it took phone calling more than going on the web for me, but also just to be in this space where it's changing, and the promise is that, every American who wants one will be able to get one soon. And, knowing all the people that I have lost, or that I know of, that people I know have lost over this past year, to know that those of us still fortunate enough to be here at this moment in time are going to have access. I really, I just felt like I'm taking my chance with the vaccine, not with the disease. It doesn't make sense to take a chance with that disease. We've just watched it do too much damage. So the good news is it's spring. The good news is I've gotten a second shot. The good news may be that there's a little more money to help you get by right now. The good news was St. Patrick's Day a few days back was the 10th anniversary of my dissertation defense on St. Patrick's Day. And, to be 10 years past, that's not a bad thing either. That was a quite trying moment in time. And so it's, kind of nice to be past that. But, the bad news is there's been some bad news this week too. And so part of the bad news is where this pandemic is, and so very briefly, there in this world this week, this week there were 3,414,000 more cases, at a rate of 488,000 per day around the globe. And around the globe, deaths this week from this disease were 62,388 at a rate of about 9,000 a day. In the United States this week, there were 435,763 new diagnosed cases, people who got tests and were found positive, which is a rate of 62,252 a day. So still pretty steep. And that's the death rate this week was 8,000 a week and over 1,000 a day. And for a total death rate, according to the COVID tracker I use, ncov2019.live, we hit 554, almost 555,000 people who have passed away in this nation, in my country, of this disease. So if you get the chance to take a vaccine, I strongly suggest you think about it. I know you have a right to make your choices, and we've all had some reasons for hesitancy early on. We all felt like it was this rushed? How did this happen so quickly? We wanted it this quickly, but also, is it real? Is it good? Is it trustworthy if it's this quickly? And then, what the scientists are assuring us is that, no, actually, they were working on this technology for the mRNA vaccines for a good 10 years, because they knew pandemics were going to be coming in this way. First off, they've come through all of human history. There's been 3 in the last 100 years, in 1918, 1919, I think it was 57, 58, and 1968, 69. And, and so they happen anyway, smallpox, all the bubonic plague, pandemics throughout human history, but also the fact that we've been messing with the environment and taking away the habitat of wild animals has increased the likelihood of this transfer of, from animal to human. And so they were working on this, and they were prepared. They only needed the code for a particular virus to plug into this vaccine. And so that's how they were able to do it so quickly, is that this technology has pre-existed this particular pandemic outbreak, which is good news if there are going to be more in the future, right? But so anyway, so I cast my lot on that side, as I, had a friend who died this Christmas this January. Well, she kind of died twice, but so just throwing my hat into the ring on the side of the vaccine. Really, really feeling great relief about that. Also, those I love being able to begin to get vaccinated as well. Just that space, this whole year I've been coming on here weekly and sharing with you my faith for me and mine to make it through and for you and yours to make it through. And so we will continue to do that, but no reason not to take the help that's available to us. And they don't need to chip us. Our phones already tell them everywhere we go and everything we do and say. So it's all done. But there's also the other thing that's, well, I'm sure there were other things, but another thing that was really, really horrific and tragic this week was the shootings at the spas in Georgia and of Asian Americans. And I had just finished teaching, I'm teaching on hate crimes in a particular class that I'm teaching, and teaching on hate crimes in regard to LGBT people. So they're, the factor of hate crimes, and in any given space, when people begin to make advancements, there begins to be backlash and pushback. And so I know a fair amount about hate crimes in general. The highest category of hate crime bias has always been race, and and just after it, LGBT, and also religion and immigrant status, native born versus immigrant status. So lots, these spaces in which this happens. And there was a Hate Crimes Act that was passed over the window of time in which I was doing my dissertation, right? So the James Byrd Jr. Matthew Shepard Act. There was the egregious hate crime murder of Matthew Shepard for being a gay male back in 1998, in fall 1998. And that same late summer, fall time period, there was the random hate crime killing of James Byrd Jr. in Jasper, Texas, who was chained to the back of a pickup truck and dragged to death by a couple of guys trying to jump into a neo-Nazi alt-right group organization, trying to prove their loyalty by picking up somebody at random and murdering him. And so there was a demand made at that point in time in 1998 for a hate crimes law. And it took us a decade to win that, to have the passage and the signing of the James Byrd Jr. and Matthew Shepard Act. And one of the things that kept being asked during that window of time was, what is it? Why do we need this hate crime law? They were each murdered. Their assailants, the perpetrators, were being tried for murder. Why was there a need for anything more than simply a murder charge? And the fact is, and the argument was, that a hate crime is not just about the individual. Certainly, in very real ways, if you were Matthew Shepard, it was about you, right? If you were James Byrd Jr., it was about, you. But in truth, also, when those things happen, they speak to entire communities. So when Matthew Shepard died, every LGBTQ person in the United States, at least, heard loud and clear the message, this could be you. When James Byrd Jr. was murdered, was lynched, because lynching is not simply hanging, every African American, every Black person, every person of color in the United States heard, don't feel safe, this could be you. Same when Emmett Till was murdered back in the 1950s, right? And the whole history of lynching in the United States, and the whole history of that, there's a piece of it that speaks to the population. With in the past few years, with the rise of hate speech, there's been a rise of anti-Semitism. And every time that there's been that kind of action, there's a synagogue near me that was set on fire a few years back, and they managed to put it out. I don't think there was to my knowledge, there wasn't a great deal of structural damage sustained, but also in 2016 with the presidential election, there were a lot of Jewish cemeteries in my region where the gravestones were attacked and knocked over and broken or smashed. And that kind of vandalism, that kind of action speaks to everyone that fits in that group, right? So it speaks to the entire Jewish community that, it says, this could be you, don't feel safe. And so what's been happening in particular in regard to Asians in America and Asian Americans over this past year, as this virus started, in the first place that we saw the outbreak, the first place we became aware of what became very, very quickly a worldwide problem was in China. right? But very quickly then it's in Italy, and very quickly then it's in Washington, was it Seattle, and then New York City and New York State, and then coming down into North Jersey, which is right by me. And so a lot of students, and I teach in South Jersey, a lot of my students, when they were sent home a year ago, at the start of spring break, not to return, until next September, still, to be announced. When that, was all going on, a lot of people that I became aware of, a lot of my students who lost family members and who got sick themselves. And in fact, within days, of my teaching a class, I got an email from a student who was, tested COVID positive. We'd been in class on Monday. I'd canceled that Wednesday class, and by the next Monday or so, I'd gotten, the email from him that he tested positive. And so, just like that whole, it was here, and it was in, amongst my students and their families, and affecting our lives, their lives, and my clients and their lives. And so just, very, very real and speaking to us. But then this labeling it as being Chinese has brought this entire rise in hate crimes, specifically targeting people who look Asian. And so that, this act that happens, I mean, the perpetrators trying to claim, it wasn't race-based. Well, the sexualization of Asian American women, or of Asian women, specifically in pornography, and that whole something, it's, yes, there's a conflation of sexism with the racism, but it's clearly raced sexism. It's clearly a hate crime. Interestingly, women have never been included in hate crime legislation. Rape and sexual assault aren't considered hate crimes. I would argue they speak to every woman and let her know she's not safe either. Nevertheless, by trying to claim, no, it was about his sex addiction, as opposed to it was about their race, or about their intersection of race and gender, it's trying to get out of it kind of thing, right? Because the hate crime statute, if he is tried under hate crime laws, it will be a stiffer sentence. The point was to recognize that when you target an individual for their minority group status, whatever that might be, you are then speaking to that entire community. And in that speaking, you are harming more than the individual or the family of the individual that you have targeted, right? So there's some, real things going on there, and the numbers are just astronomical. What's actually going on, the actual violence on the street right now, and the danger to those who are Asian American or Asian in America. So we want to include that particular minority group in our visualization and our prayers tonight. And but also, it's important to recognize that in troubled times, so here we are, a year into this thing that's affected all of us one way or another. And in troubled times, it's all the more important to be in touch with our spirituality, right? So as an interfaith minister, as someone who uses I use hypnotherapy as a spiritual practice. Hypnotherapy is, in fact, and in essence, it's not actually magic, and it's not actually some power that I can exert over people or that anyone else can. Some of the advertising about it on, the internet or video channels is actually kind of not very grounded in reality. The fact is that hypnotherapy is a guided visualization. It is a technique by which you focus your mind on a picture that I'm painting, and it allows you to relax. It allows you to relax your body, and it allows your conscious mind to grow kind of still, to finally shut up some of that thought, some of those thoughts to just never stop. We have this constant chatter in our brains, especially in Western cultures, right? Or at least certainly in Western cultures. I actually don't know about the others, but I'm no good at transcendental meditation. And, so I just think there's something about the lives we're living and the time we're living and the technology and the multitasking and the demands and the things that have increased. Email was supposed to make our lives easier. The computer was supposed to simplify things. And instead it's just put more demands on us, more pressure, speeded up things. Now, so many people who are fortunate enough to have jobs and to be working before the pandemic and in the pandemic. A lot of people in their daily workspace, there's so much email. How do you ever get to the tasks you're actually hired to do? Because you could literally, the email itself has become a full-time job, just period. And forget personal email. Like, who's got time for that? But in all of this hurry and space, when we paint a picture and walk down a beach in our mind's eye, or walk through the woods and sit in the dusk, or sit in the warming of the spring. As we do that mentally, the chatter quiets down. And when the chatter quiets down, we can begin to hear our own inner guidance. We all have an intuitive guidance system. We all have an inner GPS. We all have intuition. We all get gut feelings. We all get flashes of knowing, but we're usually so busy, we tune them out. And as a culture, we train ourselves to ignore anything we don't have a justification for or a rationale for. But actually, you have intuition. And in a time of pressure like the one we're living through, it's all the more important for you to find your way to that inner space inside you, to find your way into the quiet and the stillness, and to listen and to hear. And so we get to do that when we do this, right? So if I'm working with somebody one-on-one, I'm taking them often into that space, as much as they'll go with me, as much as they'll let themselves go and let themselves trust what's coming to them. Some people are very visual, and when you relax, you see things in your mind's eye. Other people are more auditory, and when they let themselves relax, they sort of hear thoughts or sentences or ideas. Other people just kind of aren't even particularly visual or particularly auditory, but they'll feel, right? They'll be like, well, I don't see, what do you see? I don't see anything. It's just black. I see the back of my eyelids. But what do you feel? When I ask you this question, what's your feeling response? Or what do you know? Like what comes to you? What perceptions are there in that deep inner space? And so we can train ourselves to just let ourselves go into that place. I might have told this story before, but briefly. I had a friend who used to say, she'd be like, I'm going to go get the bus now. And then she'd say, wait, God just told me the bus came and I missed it. I'm like, God told you the bus? Like, how did God tell you that the bus came and you missed it and forget it and go later? But I began to realize so in practicing that, beginning to practice a deep contemplative prayer, and beginning to practice a form of meditation, I began to notice that I had gut feelings. And one day I went to change my baby's diaper, and I got a weird feeling, like, don't do that now, that little twisty feeling in the gut, like, that's a red light. That's a don't do it. And other times she was like, oh, I want to call Jim. That's a drawing to do something, right? That's an urging to, that's a green light. But I got that little red light. I went to pick her up and change her diaper, and it was wet. Pampers are expensive though. And I go to change whatever brand, and I go to change her Loves. And as I go to change it, they had gatherings around the leg that mattered. And so I went to make that change. I got that twisty feeling, but I ignored it. So I changed her diaper anyway. And moments later, she was over behind the couch making grunting noises, pooping in the new diaper that I just put on her. And so I had heard. And what I had heard was like, don't do it right this second, wait. If I just went, and listened to that little feeling and said, let me go check the food on the stove. I'll be right back. And put her down, let her play another minute, come back. I would have not wasted a diaper, right? So we all have that. We just have not, we've trained ourselves to ignore it. So I'd like to help train you to pay attention to it. So tonight, again, we're visualizing you and yours making it through this pandemic, all the way through to whatever our new normal looks like, to more peace and more safety. We're also visualizing on purpose a just nation, a kind nation, a nation where there's racial justice and equity, where the kinds of things I teach don't have to be about what's wrong anymore, but can be about how we're doing it right. Civil rights, human rights for every one of us, whatever people groups we fit into, that matters. That really is who we're supposed to be as Americans. I know we've got this history that's not where we started. I know all of that, but there's a lot of Americans across generations who have fought the good fight to get us to live up to our highest ideals, to the pretty words of our founding documents, to that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to that, endowed with you by your creator with inalienable rights, to all of us, female or male, Black or Asian or Latinx or white or indigenous, all of us, old and young and in the middle, all of us. That's the real America. The real America is a nation of immigrants that came and took land that was occupied in a genocide, but then wrote these pretty words. And among us, there was a labor movement, and there was, led by little immigrant teenage girls often, and there was an abolitionist movement and a civil rights movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. And there's been waves of women's rights activism, and there's been waves of LGBTQ activism, and there's been waves of indigenous activism, of the American Indian movement, and various iterations of it, and coming up to and fighting for the environment, and fighting for their own land, and fighting to be free of the contamination of pipelines and mining and the extractive industries of the earth, or of the corporations that ruin the earth. And there's an environmental movement, and actually a couple of generations of people going back at least to Rachel Carson. Even before that, there's the whole preservation of the national parks movement. There's a long history of valiant peoples who were born or came to the United States and have grown up and joined in here to make a difference and to make this a better place for all of us. So let's visualize that America. Let's continue to visualize America where we all have the right to vote, and the right to vote even by mail in a pandemic, and the right to vote by mail if we're, sick or old or something, like just, actual voter empowerment instead of voter suppression. That's democracy. That's America. So let's go into our space and just use your mind now to begin to imagine relaxing. You are allowing yourself to begin to breathe in a sense of peace. Imagine your breath is drawing peace into your chest, your lungs, causing your heart rate to slow down and your breathing to deepen and slow. Just take a moment and be aware of the next 3 breaths. And without radically altering them, just allow them to slow and to deepen. To be aware of your diaphragm, that muscle at the bottom of your lungs, beneath your lungs, and your abdomen that expands and contracts. As you breathe in, your belly should actually go out. As you breathe out, it should come in. Just notice that. And notice the feeling of the air against the skin of your face and hands. Just the feeling of the air against you. And the gravity holding you to your chair or bed or wherever you are right now, just that sense of gravity. And in this space, draw into your mind springtime and the beauty of things beginning to be warm. And even if you've got allergies that come up in the spring, just imagine your allergy meds are working and you see the beauty of the flowers. Visualizing, saw some purple crocuses the other day in the yard and the shoots that will be daffodils, the beginning of a couple of yellow flowers on a bush that will flower out as forsythia. Just see the forsythia blooming, see the daffodils and the tulips. And in your mind's eye, all the beauty of the flowering trees, the pinks and the purples, and just see the white flowers, just the gorgeous trees that flower out, and all the lovely variegated shades of green on new leaves all through the woods or the yards around you. Just imagine. Wherever you are, just feel the gentleness of the cold having gone. It's not hot yet, it's just perfect, the perfect temperature. Imagine yourself on a perfectly beautiful day. And as you do, just imagine that sunlight is warming and relaxing the muscles of your forehead and face, letting all the tension go. And the sun is melting the tension away from the back of your neck, your shoulders, the large muscles of your back, running down your spine, between your shoulder blades, peace and freedom and relaxation, all the burdens just falling off. Your arms relaxing, your midsection, your legs, just letting go. And as we count from 10 to 1, just let your consciousness drop a little deeper to pay attention to your gut. Let your awareness turn now to a focus on that space in your abdomen just below your rib cage, the place of the gut feelings, your solar plexus, going there now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And in that space, feel a sense of safety. Create safety. Reach out to God, whomever you conceive God to be, or whatever is, however you visualize it. Safety. Affirming science at the same time, that you simply affirm that you are reaching inward for safe passage through these times. Even though the ship has been sailing on fraught seas, you safe, here, now. And in that section in the middle of you, just imagine a beam of light that expands out from you, comes out from you, wraps around you, like the circle that trains down on an actor on the stage, that stage light lighting you up, and into that space bring everyone you love and need most. Your immediate family, children, grandchildren, siblings, parents, grandparents, whomever's there, significant other, spouse, just the people you love and need into that circle, and expanding out from there around you. Just allow that extension to include those that matter to you in other ways, friends, people you care for, coworkers, your area, your region, your state, the nation, the globe. Draw on safety, create safety on purpose, intentionally. This is manifesting. This is intending to create an energy toward deliverance for all of us. We know that the one surety in life is that everything changes, and this thing we've been living through is also changing, and see it changing in ways that bring us out, not prematurely, but for real. And in this space, create the peace and safety that you desire for everyone in your group, however you are embodied, your gender, your orientation, your race, your ethnicity, your religion, your native born or foreign born status. Just take a moment and see people at your intersections of identities safe. Justice and equity and freedom. The American dream is not really just a house and a fenced yard. The American dream is not in truth, richness. You're not commodities, you're not consumers, you're citizens. In the American dream is a place where each individual is safe to pursue making a contribution in the world. See that for you and yours, and then expand that out to other groups, to all the other intersections of identities. And laws, just take a moment to visualize laws and lawmakers standing on the side of civil rights, of human rights, at every level, in every way. Everything that pops to mind, see peace and safety and equity under law and in social truth. See, there's always two parts of a movement, the legal and the social. See both places finally achieving what we've been laboring for, essentially for almost the 200 some years. Certainly since the early 1800s. Feel that feeling. See it. See America becoming her potential. And in this particular moment, take a moment to send safety to Asian Americans and Asians in America. Safety. To lift them up to Source or God, to hold them in the light. And see hate reduced. All that hate that's been stirred up, all that fear. None of us did this to each other. It's a virus. And just taking another moment, see that you have at the core of your being a quiet little voice that draws you to something or gives you a little feeling not to do something, and begin to pay more attention to your gut feelings, to notice them, and to give yourself a chance to follow them. Your intuition, when you learn to tease it apart from fear and worry, when you learn to walk in peace and listen on the inside, it will never lead you astray. Not your intuition. It's not your emotions. It comes to you and through you, not from your mind. It comes from deeper in. Your subconscious or your spirit, depending on how you view it, there's that space. So as you prepare to come back today, again, see you and yours safe, whole, and well, brought safely through in me and mine, and see a world where human beings treat each other properly, treat animals humanely, and treat the environment with respect, that we all may survive. So as you allow yourself just to come back into your conscious state, you're always conscious, but into the upper part of your mind, take this moment to recognize you do have a human spirit, and your human spirit seeks to guide you. If you want more instruction, you can reach me. There's a booking website listed in the description. I would ask you to like and subscribe and help the channel grow a little, but mostly I ask that you stay safe and believe for safety. We don't do foolishness. It's not walking in faith. It's not walking in foolishness or presumption. We walk in faith, not fear, but we also listen on the inside. And we also use what we have from the conscious mind and science and what is known and studied. Science is right about a lot of stuff. And what it's not right about, it tweaks. And the scientific method reveals more. But at this moment in time, you and yours do follow not your fear, your gut. Until next week, be blessed, be well, be safe.